And welcome back to another video here from the off-grid garage. It is sunny outside, about 6 amps. Well, that's how we measure the weather now, right? In amps, not in temperature, not in degrees or Fahrenheit anymore. No, in amps. So 6 amps outside. We actually have a bit of clouds coming in now, but I can see the green light of the solar charge controller. That means we are already floating. And if you are floating at 11:30, you know you had a very sunny morning, right? So it's time to burn some energy. And today, as I promised you, we want to try the Ozito 2.4 kilowatt shredder. We're doing some mulching. I've got some branches in the backyard and I'll pull the extension cable now. We plug this one into the inverter and then we get going. Well, unfortunately, I cannot take the devices with me. We are going approximately behind the garage over there somewhere, but I don't have any reception for the Bluetooth anymore. I just get reception for the inverter, so we can have a look at the power of the inverter as well. But what I will do is, you can see we are at 100% now and 0 amps used of the battery. Everything is zeroed out. So what I will do is I will go to trends here, which shows us the voltage and the current as well. And this is our solar charge controller, which is not too much of a concern at the moment. We are still floating. I really want to have a look at the inverter actually and the battery and see how much current we draw from the battery and the inverter. Can it actually cope with 2.4 kilowatts? I think I found a spot behind the garage where we actually have reception. It is next to the window. I think there is less metal. I've got my mobile phone here on the tripod and we've got reception here to the inverter. Let's see if this one works here as well. Okay, I found a spot here on my tripod on top of all these rocks here and bricks. So if the tablet falls off, well, that was it. In the name of science, we just have reception through the window here. Obviously, this mesh is not as obstructing as the metal itself for the Bluetooth signal. So we are still 53.9 floating, 0.3 amps going into the battery, and we will have a look at the battery voltage here and current, if you can actually see anything at all. The VICTRON inverter says 0 VA. It doesn't give us any more information, unfortunately. So we have to cluster and Frankenstein this together later on. Okay, let's connect the inverter. Did I say inverter? I always say inverter when I mean charge controller, when I mean shredder. Every time I say inverter, I don't mean inverter, right? So, this one here, 230 volt S1. I don't know what S1 and S6 means. Okay, so 2000 watt up to 2400 watt it is. All right. So the RPMs are 40 per minute. Yeah, this electric motor here has a gearbox inside and it turns these wheels here, you can probably see them inside there, very slowly and crunches all these branches and twigs. So this is not one of the high RPM shredders. It's a slow and silent shredder, so it doesn't make much noise either. Okay, let's turn this on and see what the peak is on the actual... Unable to connect. There. Okay, let's turn it on. Let's see what we get. Oh, it doesn't connect. Okay, we can have a look. We got a peak of about 40 amps, 38, 40 amps. And now it's tapering off to only -7, -5 amps. And we are using 1200 watts. How much does it use when it turns on? Why don't I have reception here? There's just no reception right here, eh? Okay, now. 3,500. Did you see that? 3,500 we had just to turn on the motor. All right, let's do some work and hopefully we can have a look from time to time what's going on here. I'll leave it here. I hope it works. Alright, so far I can see minus 20 amps. It's going up and down, of course. And 1200 watts. Okay, I've got these three branches here, I'll put them in all at once and then we have a look at the displays. So 1700, 1500 watts, minus 20 amps again. Not too bad, actually, not too bad. Okay, we can also see peaks up to 50 amps here because two branches are stuck in the machine, and when I turn it on it actually doesn't do anything anymore. Blocks the motor. This is maximum load. Yeah, that's like 60 amps or so peak. Whoa. It stops the machine. This is hardwood, that's why. At 20 amps. Well, the inverter went into overload just now and turned off all the power. Just for a few seconds, and then it turned back on, and I could unstuck the branches in here which were clogging up the wheels, so it should work again. There you go, no trouble at all, minus 6 amps only. So far so good, halfway done. Just want to quickly measure the temperature here on the inverter. 36 on the inverter, 34, 40 on the charge controller, 38 on the panel, and 35 on the back wall here. This is our outside wall of the shed. Alright, so far no major drama until this is the curve. So minus, this is 90, this is 69.1, yeah, close to, I would say, minus 60 amps. So peak, that's peak. So 60 amps, 50 volts, 3 kilowatt. And now it looks like, yeah, we are back to a float mode. That was all. We've got no ampere hours lost since we started. So most of the power must have come from solar straight away because we've got sunny weather now. Not a battery test, but just an inverter test. Well, I must admit, the inverter is not as strong as the grid itself. When the shredder got stuck with the branches, it usually makes this humming sound and you can hear the motor trying to get the branches through, but this one didn't. It just stopped. So obviously the inverter shuts down, it limits the power to the motor, which the grid obviously doesn't. Yeah, and then we had this overload situation where the inverter shut off completely, just for probably 5, 6, 10 seconds maximum, and then it turned back on. So I have to have a look in the settings what I can actually change in there to avoid this from happening if branches get stuck in the shredder. Yeah, and this is just this super dynamic load you can see here on the inverter, on the battery. You can see when we put branches in there, it needs to work really hard and then it eases off again, goes into idling, uses only 5, 6 amps, and then it goes down to minus 30, 40, 50, 60 amps. We have seen that's a very dynamic and challenging load, I think, for the inverter because it constantly needs to adjust the current and voltages to make this happen. I would really like to do a bit more testing with the inverter and the battery now that everything is connected correctly with the bigger cables and everything. So I actually should hook up the car and then we do some more testing of the inverter and battery and see when the inverter goes in overload. Okay, let's do that. Alright, so I have plugged in the vehicle now. I have to use this adapter, unfortunately, again from 10 amps to 15 amps. With a 10 amp circuit breaker and RCD, that way around. Otherwise we cannot utilize the full 12 amp inside the car, which I would like to test now and see if the inverter can cope with that and what temperature it gets. So after our shredder and mulching activity this morning, the inverter was just idling for about an hour, which is 96 Fahrenheit. Okay, we will start with 5 amps only. So solar charger delivers 1050 watts. Another 300 watts are coming from the battery. And all in total we are using around 1200 VA or watts. Okay, so this shouldn't be a problem at all. I crank up the charging speed. So this is now 7 amps is 1650. All right, let's go for 8. Okay, let's keep this running for half an hour and then we measure temperatures again. Okay, because this is our first big load test now, I just want to make sure there is no heat. That is all good. Our relay is on. Well, I guess it doesn't make a difference if it's on or off. And I quickly do a hand check here of temperatures of the terminals. But at the moment there's only 800 watts coming from the battery now. So the rest is coming directly from our solar. Okay, I now cranked up the charging speed to 10 amps inside the car. And we now get a high temperature warning from the inverter. I've turned off the solar charging for the moment. I just want to test the battery as well. And we are cranking 52 amps from the battery. So 2.7 kilowatts, 42. Yeah, fans are running full speed. And we also can see the alarm here coming up. This is the over temperature. And it is fairly warm here on the chassis. 43. 44 at some stages there. Fuse has 35. Shunt has 35. This is all good. Batteries are nice and cool at 28. We've got about 34 degrees outside. So even sucking in this air from the garage here is not much cooling for the inverter, of course. There's another high temperature warning at 137 just now. But it doesn't give you any temperature or something. What a shame. Okay, this is on 10 amps now, charging the vehicle. This is 10 out of 12. I doubt we could actually go to 12 or even to 11 without totally overloading the inverter. We are charging now for half an hour on 10 amps and pulling 52.5 amps from the battery constantly. Solar is still off, just for testing the battery as well and all the connections. And what I did now, I opened the second garage door here and also put the fan in this direction, so it blows the air in this direction there to give the inverter some fresh air. And this has cooled it down by 2 degrees already. But again, it's a hot day. If we measure here just the workbench, we already have 32 degrees here on the workbench on the wood. Yeah, the outside wall 34. Inverter 42.2, so it's cooling down. So this obviously makes a difference. Okay, so the fan has just stopped and I think the inverter has now turned off. High temperature warning, high temperature warning, high temperature warning. 44.6 degrees. Well, the sunshine came just out again. And yeah, it's getting really warm inside the garage here. So 2.4 kilowatts is the maximum the inverter can do before it shuts down. Yeah, 0 amps. That's it. No power. So I have now reduced the charging speed inside the car to 8 amps. And we are still pulling almost 2 kilowatts from the inverter now. The high temperature alarm just came back after it turned on again. We are pulling 41, 42 amps from the battery. Still no solar, everything is turned off here. Got now 41 degrees on the outside of the inverter, but the alarm has cleared and there's no over temperature warning anymore on the app as well. So I guess it has something like 45 degrees or something internal temperature shut off. Well, it triggers the alarm then. And we are still charging with 1700 watts. So 1700 seems to be the sweet spot for this outside temperature here. So we don't get any over temperature warnings anymore at the moment. 1700 watts, that's half of what it's rated for. But still we need to consider we've got 33, 34 degrees outside. So the ambient temperature is super high already. And the device is really struggling to cool itself down at these temperatures. Well, and just now my wife has turned on the irrigation, which well, keeps the inverter definitely occupied. But this time it's only 1 kilowatt we are pulling from the battery now. So 16 amps, 17 amps. I'm really not so concerned about the inverter stuff and the heat it produces. It was an extreme hot day today, so you know, that was just me testing it out. I know if you look in the manual, the continuous output here is explained at 25 degrees, 40 and 65 degrees. And if you look here on the right hand side, it's 2.4 kilowatt at 25 degrees. So the 3 kilowatts you will only get if you have cold climates. So I will probably get this in winter time when it's cold here, but in summertime now 2.4 or even 2.2 only at 40 degrees. And we have exactly seen that today in this hot climate here. I'm not so concerned about the output of the inverter. I'm far more concerned about my terminal resistance here of these battery cells. I don't know, battery cell number 1 is super good connected, obviously. It's almost at 3.3 volts. And well, you can see the gray one, number 8, 3.25. $3.255. All right, number 8. I'm just, yeah, I'll show you again. I'll put this next to each other. Watch the number and watch my actual and look at the force I'm applying. Just tiny bit, bang, look at this, there was 20 millivolt. Just me pushing it a little bit further, but it's not actually tightening the nut more, it's more like putting more force on the actual nut, and now it's perfectly fine. It's in line with all the other ones. So there's definitely something going on with the connections between bus bars and terminals, or it's my balance leads that they are not connected correctly or something. Well, the problem is the video where I actually sanded and polished and cleaned the bus bars and put this all back together is not published yet while I'm filming this here. I'm a little bit behind with my editing, but I keep filming all this kind of stuff. So I don't even know what your comments will be on this video when I polished and cleaned the terminals. Maybe I did something completely wrong and this is all not working as I thought it would work. So I'm not sure. There's definitely something wrong with my connections somehow between the balance leads and the bus bar. I should actually measure this with my voltmeter. I have totally forgotten that. I should do that. Maybe we can just turn on the car again for a moment and let the pump run as well. Alright, let's do that. Let's go a little bit higher. And I got down to 5 amps. And we let the car charge again, including because the pump is running as well. Yeah, I need to be mindful because the irrigation pump is running as well. So we are pulling now 42 amps again. And let's have a look at our battery at 42 amps. 17 millivolt deviation there. and everything seems to be fine. Okay, let's wait a couple of minutes and see if this changes. So we've got cell number 10 here, and the two terminals here. Oh, hang on, I just positive and negative. You can see we measure 3254 and the BMS shows us 3237. So this is like 20 millivolt less what the BMS shows us, what I measure. Okay, so let's measure from the positive terminal here on top of the grub nut to the bus bar. We can see we've got 2 millivolt difference. The grub nut basically is directly connected, threaded into the terminal of the cell. So this should be the best contact we ever have, right? So 2 millivolt on this side, and we do the same on the other side, negative into the grub nut and positive on the bus bar just next to it, and we can see we've got 14 millivolt. 14 millivolts. Yeah, this is from the terminal to the bus bar, 14 millivolt. And that's why the cell is so low in the BMS. Okay, so I will have my spanner here, and we put the voltmeter back on the grub nut and the bus bar, so you can see on the multimeter the 15 millivolt, and I just loosen this nut a little bit. Nothing changes, and now I'm tightening it again, and now we've got only 10 millivolt difference, so I'm not sure how far I can tighten that. 8. So it goes a little bit down. I have done this just with another cell here, and it was 1 millivolt afterwards. I cannot do it with number 10 though. Something is not right with the bus bar or the actual terminal here. So I have to take this apart again and change it. But you can see it has actually made a difference here of about 10-15 millivolt already in the BMS. So it's not flagged as the lowest cell anymore. What a shit show, right? And this is exactly what I have done right now here. I have measured from the grub nut to the bus bar, straight next to it. We can see this one. I can see it. 5 millivolt here. On the other side, this is 0. On this side, this is 0. Over here, 8. See, this is all bad. On this side, 1. Over here, 1. And test one more. 0. And one more. 6. Huh? What a show. So, and this is exactly my problem. This is the problem I have. I have 2 high voltage drops between the bus bar and the terminal actually. And I don't know why. Because I haven't posted the other video and you haven't given me any tips yet. So I will do this right now. Oh, the inverter is flashing again. I will post this video very soon where I polished and cleaned and sanded the bus bars, and hopefully I get some tips. I don't know what I've done wrong. It looked alright, you know. There was the actual terminals were mirror plank, and I also polished the bus bars and put this grease in between, and everything seemed to be fine. But under high load, 40-50 amps, this shit happens. And then I wiggle just a little bit around and it fixes it. So obviously there is some issues with the contacts between bus bar and terminal. Alright guys, anyways, this was just me testing the actual inverter today under different conditions. Once with the shredder and mulcher over there, 2.4 kilowatt. So we could see an overload situation where the inverter actually turned off because the motor was blocked with a branch and pulled so much amps the inverter actually shut down. So that was good. And the other test was charging the Tesla, of course, and we have seen the over temperature shutdown as well with the inverter if it gets too hot. So I have to figure out what to do with the enclosure now. Well, I actually have already, so I've got a solution for that as well. And thankfully I can adjust the charging speed inside the car and can match this the outside temperature. So if I charge during the night, there will be no problem with heat or something. Our night temperatures are just dropping below 20 degrees now, so it's relatively cool. And this is something the inverter likes, of course, if I charge the car overnight. I have to play a little bit more to get more used to it and see what settings are working for me. But so far, my main concern is the battery terminals and the busbar connections, which you have seen now in this video again, are not optimal. Some are very good. I don't have any problems with other cells, but some of the cells are not working for me. So I probably turn the busbar around or exchange them with another busbar and see if this makes a difference until I post this video and you make some comments. Until then, guys, stay charged, stay safe. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. See you then. Bye-bye.